Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the December 22nd meeting of the Urban Design Commission. I'm calling this meeting to order. The time is now 6:01 p.m. And the date is, I'd already mentioned that, December 22nd, 2020. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GLC 30A, section 18, and the governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, as well as Mayor Curtatone's declaration of emergency dated March 15th, 2020. This meeting of the Urban Design Commission will be conducted via remote participation. An audio recording will be available as soon as possible after the meeting. With us this evening are members of the Urban Design Commission, Deborah Fennick, Frank Valdez, Andrew Abba, and with me as I am Sarah Lewis, and with me as co-chair this evening is Courtney Kirk. So our first items on the agenda are actually general business and approval of meeting minutes. So do I have has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes?
Yes.
Do I have a motion?
Yeah, I move to approve the minutes.
I second.
All right. So that is meeting minutes of October 13th, 2020 and October 27th, 2020 have been motioned and seconded. Roll call vote. Deborah?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
And Andrew?
Yes.
All right. The next, as we move on to our design reviews, we have a visit once again from 371 Highland Avenue, which was a project that was continued from November 3rd. I believe presenting this evening, we have Will Chalfant from Jake House's office. And Will, I am going to see, I can unmute you and let me see if I can promote you to a panelist. All right, Will, are you there? Look at that. Hello.
How's everyone doing? I will share my screen here. Hang on. Can you see? No, you can't see that. I actually don't have permission to share right now.
Okay, let me double check. Try that now. You should be good. Okay.
Okay. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, looks good here.
All right. Okay. So as you all know, you've seen this project before a couple times. So we're here for the one last look. And I guess I just want to start off on the ground floor with just a couple of minor modifications. There have been discussion about, possibly moving the bike room back here and the fitness room up to the front. We've kept the bikes where they are. We feel that's the best access way in and out. We've sort of cleaned up this inner court lobby rather a little bit, changed the configuration of the trash room and added a common restroom here. But this is kind of going to harken into what we're talking about on the outside. So here we were at one point, which was a mess of a lot of things going on here, but this is our understanding. of just how we wanted these things to read as two different buildings. We progressed into this latest version, which you all saw, and you know, I heard at the last meeting that this dividing element here should really be looked at in a different material. This central area obviously was sort of disconnected from the rest of the development, and this corner element, while interesting, really sort of didn't have a necessarily reasoning behind it and didn't relate to other elements of the building. There are also some material questions and a few other things here. So what we've done is a few things. And I'm actually going to go to, I think this is probably the best view here. So we did change this area here to masonry. What we're doing is, instead of, well, it was previously a metal panel we were calling for, we're doing a stacked bond brick here. We did look at narrowing that. I know Deborah had mentioned, you know, almost like a finger hole sort of depth, or, you know, maybe that's a slight exaggeration, but a narrower path. And when we looked at that, it really kind of lost its prominence as a sort of corner framing element. And especially when it was narrow at both the top and the bottom, it got lost. I'm not opposed to possibly shrinking it a little bit further if the board's, you know, is so inclined to mention, but that's where we ended up. Secondly, we removed the cornices from the top here. They were sort of it didn't really relate to the rest of the design, a little too ornamental, really. And we feel that this sort of calmer, more subtle cornice treatment is really more appropriate for the rest of the building. And we, most importantly here, sort of removed our brick fingers that we had and sort of gave a rhythm to this frame idea throughout the design. It's sort of highlighting different units, as well as now sort of creating a signifying entry point. This frame comes down and extrudes out over the side, well, not over the sidewalk, but front, partially actually over the sidewalk. That's something I want to discuss at a later time. But, and signifying this is the residential entry. The corner frame, as it were, has been toned down, and the proportions and alignment now match with this center element. And we've also created sort of a rhythm of different sizes of squares within this building to relate to what we're doing on this storefront. You know, we wanted to hide that garage, so we treated that as a sort of frosted glass storefront aesthetic, so that it doesn't necessarily read as a garage. We're carrying that through here because program-wise, we have the bike room here, the secondary stair here, and then the entry. So these three spaces, I think, will be treated in a somewhat blocked view, not entirely transparent, somewhat opaque. And those squares sort of continue down here and relate to us framing of these spaces. So here's an updated street view, sort of looking down from Davis Square, again with this new masonry banding, and then the second half of the two buildings in the background. In this one, unfortunately, we didn't get out there to get a better photograph, so we're utilizing Google Street View here. But this sort of gives the other impression coming down from Davis. And you know, one comment was that this corner element was possibly a little much for a corner that may not be looking at anything in the future. So we did scale it back in its size, slightly shrinking it, but also bringing it above the existing building, which, you know, could very well in the near future be redeveloped into something itself. But we still wanted to treat this side as, you know, a bit of a focal point, because that is going to be, at least for the foreseeable future, visible as you enter, go down Highland entering Davis Square. So I do have just some flat elevations of what I've talked about, and sort of the party of the exterior here and what we're doing, wrapping the masonry around on this corner. And then the backside, again, we've treated these as the same. We removed those cornices, sort of simplified some of just the rhythm of the back of the building. While it still relates to the triple deckers in the back, it's certainly a full, entirely masonry building. So I think, I'll leave it up to everyone to discuss, so hear your input.
Hey, Will, just a question. On the left part of the building, those windows would also have sills, right? You show some sills under the windows, the white stripe, and then there's like a row that does not have sills. Would those have sills as well, like that, or is it a different type of treatment?
No, I think that, yeah, that should have a head of this. I think it would work better if it was consistent.
Okay, so it would have a sill just like the other windows, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Are there any other questions from the commission? All right. Seeing none, as I understand it at your last meeting, this was our preferred option. So we have voted on that. What we need to do at this present time is go through the design guidelines just to make sure that all of those are met.
I was sort of deferring to my colleagues to see if they had any other questions. I actually have a question about, the brick selection. Is it between, let me say, the two building halves? And so the major brick on the Davis Square side looks a little pinker than, or less orange than the, what do you call it? In the Boston side. And so are they the same brick, or is there different treatment of the mortar? What's the deal on that?
So the intention would be for those to be two completely different colored bricks. I think the one on the left would be more in the traditional, like, colonial red family color range. Whereas I think the right, we're looking at more of a same size brick, but more of a tan, well, brownish red, brownish tan is what I think. But I think this has undergone a lot of review. I think it would be only obviously appropriate to request this material board for this.
Right. Yeah.
So I think at that point, it's hard to call things out in a rendering, only because they don't look the same on the screen as they do in real life. So I'd rather get real life samples so that the board can review that as well.
Yeah, no, I was curious about intent. And then there is sort of a third brick color, or is it a difference in mortar where in the frame, which I think is fine. I think it's, the way it turns the corner, I think it's working fine. So I'm not going to argue for making it narrower. But
I think it would be probably more effective for it to be the same brick as the left with a different mortar and a different patterning, opposed to introducing a third color.
Okay, that's good. I was going to recommend that if it was different. Okay.
And just from a material, these frames, I think that could be handled a lot of ways. I was really looking at that being maybe Alucobond makes some really nice products now that can be kind of formed in different shapes that you can get a quality seam, whereas some of the other products are going to expand over time. So I didn't want to use a dirty word like drive it, but I think Alucobond or something can work well here.
And Will, just to confirm, on this facade, we're not going to be having any penetrations for exhausts or intakes or anything of that matter, right?
Correct. All penetrations will be to either the roof or you can make that a condition. We would definitely not have them on the front. I think it gets a little tricky not putting them on the sides, but I think maybe we could look at least holding them to the rear half of the sides.
I think that if I were to say something, you brought this to a level of development that I would hate for it to be
Have its teeth knocked out with some penetrations for dryer vents?
I didn't want to say that, but thank you for saying that. But you also, I think that your night rendering of the corner from the Davis Square side, it's a really nice corner and it's working really well. And I like the zipper at the top, how it's, performing, with the different brick. I would hate to see any of those penetrations in that area. And if you have to go to the back or the roof, I would prefer for you to go to the back of the roof and not, deal with any of these two streets being, the Front Street, Highland, and then West Street.
I can understand that, and I would agree. I'd prefer to route them out the back and the roof.
Right. Just because, in brick, it gets complicated when you're doing that, and it's just like, now that you need to do also, intake air and like fresh air, it's just.
Yeah, I'm introducing more ways for water to get in the building, so I'd rather minimize that to the top if possible.
Great.
We just have to, thankfully the units do stack. Just have to think, because we have such a large area of the roof that's habitable, we just have to think about where we're going to locate those. So we'll have to create some stacks. That's down the road.
But I would say that as a condition, nothing on Highland, nothing on West.
Yeah, I have, I think this is generally really come along and is, a better, is creating a better street edge on Highland. This is a pretty prominent, I actually drive by this all the time and finally realized, this is that space. But the one thing that, and maybe this will come up when we review the design in relationship to the zoning requirements, but I feel like the only thing I would ask for you to reconsider is, I feel like the facade, the two vertical pieces that resolve in a corner, sort of a different kind of cornice, sort of just a folded up.
Right here?
Cornice. Can you point to that again? Yeah, so the two verticals, the one that meets the zipper, and that cornice, well, that whole, it feels very thin to me. It feels like applique because it's broken at the entry bay,
The very top part does?
Yeah, going the other, go to the right.
Yep.
Yeah, that very narrow thing, and then it's like this tower, and I have a feeling it's not going to meet some of the, it doesn't read like two buildings. All of a sudden, it's hard to tell that what you're trying to do with this. Is it 5 different buildings? It's not 5 different buildings, but I feel like the building, the composition on the right side falls apart a bit because of the bays. Same width, that one and the entry bay, and then the next, one that breaks the cornice line. To me, it starts to fall apart in there, and I don't quite know what to suggest, except that maybe that cornice just carries across. I know you don't quite get then the relationship with the corner window, the frames that you're trying to get in there.
You're saying carry that.
I don't know if that's I don't know if that's a solution, or it's all metal. I think not that, because then I don't think that resolves well with the left side. So that's the one thing I feel like I don't think is resolved at this point. But I think unless my colleagues have anything to say, we can see if it doesn't quite jive with some of the zoning requirements.
No, Deborah, I think that, to a certain extent, I think that the site to the Davis Square definitely feels like a separate building already because of the zipper and everything. But when you move to the right, I understand that it's beginning to not look necessarily as one. buildings in order to derive it as two, that it reads like maybe 3 or 4. I see that, and maybe it's, and Will, maybe it's a material thing, maybe it's, and again, maybe it's the rendering.
Is someone's phone going off? I'm sorry. I'm hearing like show tunes a little bit.
It's my house, my house. Somebody's playing piano right now, my kids.
I'm sorry. Sorry.
Don't worry about it, I
Make sure I wasn't
apologize.
having a stroke or something.
I've been trying to stay on mute most of the time, but yeah, so deal with it. You have music,
No,
Will. I think when you move towards the right, it begins to have a lot of information that breaks it apart more, and maybe, you know, I guess that's why the question from Deborah about the brick differences, and if you can just tie it a little bit more within itself, so that it reads complete. I mean, I don't know if that's correct, but that it reads, you know, the Boston side and the Davis Square side, you know, and that maybe it is carrying at the top. I don't know what it is. I think that the moves that you've done are very successful. I think that it's maybe a question of the rendering and the brick color and some of those things, but I think that it's already working. But yeah, if you wanted to read it too.
I mean, I could, yeah, I see what you're saying, because this is much reading is a much wider area, and then all of a sudden we've got these very upright verticals. You know, we could look at maybe bringing this frame down just one floor and carrying that brick across, so then this becomes its own special frame, but I just don't know if that, well, I'm certainly happy to look at it. I mean, you know, but that, I feel weird when brick is above another material like that. Then it looks really applique, because it's you know, just doesn't look natural. But I know what you're saying.
Is the issue, what if there was sort of a minor cornice that the top of the frame elements on the metal actually came across the brick in some way? Would that get to, I'm trying to take notes to be able to articulate.
Like this would engage the brick when it comes up to the top. It would then engage the brick on the sides or something. Or
it carries at the window head instead, perhaps the top of the window heads on the brick elements. I'm just trying to unify.
I feel like the issue is that it's sort of the same issue we pointed out last time, was that the building on, we'll call it the building on the right, it feels like 4 different things, and the building on the left feels very unified, and that's most apparent when we get to the top. I feel like I just wish that either more of the metal or more of the brick continuous, so there was more of a volume and it was less of a like A, B, A, B. Like, I think this version is more successful in the sense that we just have an AB and an AB, but I still feel like that space doesn't support four different facade types in that run.
You know, Will, I think, you know what I think it is? I think that you're struggling with the idea that the Boston corner, you're designing this corner on the Boston corner and you're not letting it go. And that's dictating kind of like a lot of that, right? And that's driving a lot of the language. And I think if you cut it and you look at it that way, you go like, it makes sense. But I think in the end, if you think about it, development happening next to it, it's not going to be this predominant corner, right? So maybe you're struggling with that corner to maintain it. And maybe if you were to just take some of the brick language from the Boston side and just like articulate it, and maybe the corner is not that predominant, like you're making it, but maybe the brick just, and everything still exists, the metal, the white, Lucabond, but in a different scale. I think that it might become then a building, right? And I think that's it. I mean, I think you're there. I mean, it's really getting there.
I think that's actually the better way of addressing it. If I were to carry the brick up from where my cursor is here, so this becomes a larger brick volume, maybe it goes right to the corner. I kind of had something like that at one point, and I just was worried about this reading as this, I don't know, over the top entrance point, and when it's sort of in conjunction with the other part, to me, it made a little more, I don't know. I know what you're saying.
It's
Yes,
hard because, it's hard because what you're doing is like you're dealing with two corners and you're dealing with a lobby entrance. And you're like,
Right.
this is the entrance, these are the two corners, and it's hard. And I think that let that go and go, there's a corner predominant that's never going to change, and that's the Davis Square side. And there's another building that happens to have an entrance.
Okay.
So I think the other way to deal with this is to take brick right across the cornice and the brick right across the over the entry, and let the corner be special. I mean, that's one strategy, or the other is, so that you get, so that forward brick, has some surface to it. It's 3 bays of brick surface, and then you let the corner be eccentric. Either that or. Anyway, I think that might
Or
be
the entries.
the quietest thing to do.
To Frank's point, the corner's going to go away in 10 years, but the center point will at least be there. So maybe that. Okay.
Yeah. So I would say it's one or the other. It's either, you make more solid at the, at the Boston side, and then let the break be at the entry, or vice versa. But I think either would be satisfactory.
No,
I agree.
And Will, as you do this, just remember that you are a pioneer in the zoning. Just remember that, because we're all learning with this, and we're all going through it. So you're a pioneer, so.
it is the holidays, Frank. You're being incredibly pleasant.
I'm just saying, just don't feel bad. It's a struggle for all of us because we're all learning things. So I know that would be very critical, but I think that we're all trying to, come to this idealization of something great that represents the new zoning and your new architecture. So we want to make sure that what you're proposing and what you end up building is great, and that people can go, that guy did that, right? That guy did that. So why can I do that? So we want to make sure that you're doing that so that people go like, that was great.
No, I appreciate that, and I'll be honest. I've been using these as much of a crit session because I work like this with the staff, and this is much more successful than trying to do a Zoom crit with them. So I think it's all, you're not being overly critical. This is good.
So Sarah, I think we're ready to go through the criteria or whatever.
Yes, would you like me to read each one, or are there ones in particular that you don't think are met? Do you each have a list in front of you by chance? We'll go through one by one. Okay. Then I think the easiest way to do this is to go through as a checklist, and then if they're all acceptable, then we make one motion at the end. So facade should be visually divided into a series of architectural bays that are derived in general from the building's structural base spacing.
Check.
I second.
Piers or pilasters or other features defining each architectural bay should either extend all the way to the ground or terminate at any historic horizontal articulation defining the base of the building.
Second.
All right. Sorry, I lost my place. Architectural bays should align in general with individual or groups of storefronts and lobby entrances.
Check.
Second.
Piers, pilasters, or other features defining architecture. Each architectural bay should always project forward. Here, sorry, I had a blip here. Should always project forward and be uninterrupted by any horizontal articulation, excluding any horizontal articulation used to differentiate the base of the building.
Yes.
Second.
Vents, exhaust, and other utility features on building facades should be architecturally integrated into the design and should be located to minimize adverse effects on pedestrian comfort along sidewalks and within open spaces.
We made a comment about that, so nothing on Highland, nothing on West. So that's
Right,
okay.
we will condition. All right, buildings at terminated vistas should be articulated with design features that function as focal points.
Yes, check.
Yes.
Second.
Fenestration glazing should be inset from the plane of exterior wall surfaces.
Yes, check.
Second.
Ribbon windows should be avoided.
Check.
Second.
Monotonous and repetitive storefront or lobby systems, awnings, canopies, sign types, colors, or designs should be avoided.
Check.
Second.
Storefronts and lobby entrances should include awnings or canopies to provide weather protection for pedestrians and reduce glare for storefront display areas. Awnings should be open-ended and operable.
Well, there are no awnings being shown in the rendering, so
Not applicable.
not applicable.
Okay. Lobby entrances for upper story uses should be optimally located, well-defined, clearly visible, and separate from the entrance for other ground story uses.
Check.
Second.
Lobbies should be limited in both width and total area to preserve floor space and frontage for other ground story uses. Buildings should use any combination of facade articulation, a double height ceiling, a distinctive doorway, a change in wall material, a change in paving material within the frontage area, or some other architectural elements to make lobbies visually and materially distinctive.
Check.
Second.
The selection of materials, fenestration, and ornamentation should result in a consistent and harmonious composition that appears as a unified whole rather than a collection of unrelated parts.
Yes.
Second.
And Will, can you leave your rendering up?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
The type and color of materials should be kept to a minimum, preferably 3 or fewer.
Check.
Second.
2 or more wall materials should be combined, only one above the other, except for bay windows.
Check.
Second.
Wall materials appearing heavier in weight should be used below wall materials appearing lighter in weight, wood and metal above brick, and all 3 above stone.
Check.
Check. Second.
Horizontal or vertical board siding or shingles, regardless of material, should be avoided.
Not applicable, yeah. So,
Yeah, I think that's a not applicable. Okay. Architectural details and finished materials for the base of the building should be constructed of architectural concrete or precast cementitious panels or cast stone, heavy gauge metal panels, glazed or unglazed architectural terracotta or brick.
Check. Yes.
Second.
Exterior insulation and finish systems, EFIS, should be avoided. And so I'm going to
Not
form my,
applicable.
not applicable. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So I need somebody to make a motion that the design guidelines have been met with the exception of J, Q, and S as being non-applicable, not applicable. And a condition to control the location of the vents on the front and forward side of the building. And also a condition that we had discussed, that you guys had discussed about the selection of materials and brick choices. So we can add a condition for materials review.
Make a
So do we
motion
have a
that
motion?
design guidelines have been met with the exceptions of J, Q, and S, which are not applicable. And with the condition to control the placement of the vents along the front facade on West Street. Condition to review the materials.
I
Second.
second.
All right.
Third. It's very good, Andrew. It was awesome.
I was writing it.
Impressed.
All right, let's do a roll call vote. Deborah,
Yes, yes.
Frank,
Yes.
and Andrew.
Yes.
All in favor, motion passes. Will, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So we did comment on things that weren't covered by the guidelines. Will those also be considered in finalization of the design?
Yes, those will be, as we have the notes, those comments will be typed up in the report, and then that will be part of the report to the planning board as they go
Okay.
through the zoning process.
Super. All right.
Okay, all right, and that concludes our business for this evening. So now I just motion to adjourn.
I make a
Motion to adjourn. I make a motion to adjourn.
I made it. No.
I think we can call it a joint motion.
Yeah, and Will, just so you know, next time I wear my Yankee hat.
Well, yeah, that's fine. Right now, I have no argument right now.
Motion to
Good year to
adjourn.
do well as a pandemic, Frank. That's
Good. All right,
All right, hold on a second. We have to take a roll call vote to actually leave the meeting.
I know.
Riley,
So motion to adjourn. Deborah,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Andrew.
Yes.
All right. As of 6:39 p.m., this motion is adjourned. Thank you all.
Have good holidays.
Happy holiday.
holidays.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.